Hello, everybody. Welcome back to another episode of Am I Doing This Wrong? Same gals here, new topic today. Morgan and Ryann back for another fun one. Actually, disclaimer right at the top. This will probably be our most terrifying episode yet. How about that? What do you think, Ryann? Good disclaimer?
Yeah.
Yeah. Yes.
Yeah.
Anyway, how are you doing?
No, after that, I'm terrified. No.
Yeah, good. We all are, so.
I know. Appropriate. It fits. Yeah, it fits. No, I'm doing pretty good. I broke my foot, dude. Yeah, that fucking sucks. I broke my foot and it was doing the most mundane activity. I was literally walking. I'm not kidding. I broke my foot, and like I was telling you before we started, I was like depressed about it for about 3 days. I was laying on the couch, and that's warranted, right? Like that's appropriate for what's going on. I broke my foot and I had to get a cast, but I just, had to take a deep look within, and be like, Ryann, this is not the end of the world. Like,
true.
You're still very capable. And you have a lot of capabilities that a lot of people would still really want and appreciate, Yeah. So I had to kind of pull myself out of it and just get it back in the right headspace. And so this is giving me a good pause in my life. As Morgan knows, I do a lot. And usually it means that I'm not giving my 100% to everything, right? Because I'm just like pulled in so many different directions that I end up giving like a good 75 at everything I'm doing. You know what I mean?
Solid 75. Yeah, that's a good way of putting it.
Right. So that happened, and I'm just ready to move past it and continue with my life. So it's been a good week. I've had to pause some things, and within my profession, but in other ways, it's actually very timely and perfect.
Right. A little bit of a break. Oh, oops. Sorry. I didn't mean to make a joke there. That was not intentional. So sorry.
Yeah, it was a low blow.
Slowing
literally.
down just a little. Slowing down a little bit. That's good. Good perspective to have on it. That's true.
Right. I am trying to, have a good perspective and just be thankful for the ways that my body works in so many other situations, so it's the practice of yoga, actually, really giving thanks to your body.
There you go.
So anyway, thank you for
this episode
asking.
Brought to you by yoga. Yoga, sponsor us.
All of yoga, just all of it.
Just all the yoga. Yeah.
But anywho, how are you, Morgan?
I'm good. I feel a little anxious, but I think it's because I had like 2 lattes today, which, well, they weren't lattes, more like Americanos, but
that's even more straight.
It's like double shots through the Nespresso, and I do 2 per drink. So we might be looking at 8 shots of espresso today. Total. So I'm just feeling it, just ready to get into this episode, and we're just going to get through everything.
I have a broken foot and Morgan's ready to run a marathon. So we're a good pair.
Right. I'll carry you. It'll be fine.
That's wonderful.
Oh my gosh.
Nice. But before we get started on this episode, I did want to follow up on something that we talked about last episode, which was the serial killer that my dad actually knew. He knew this serial killer. Okay. So if you didn't listen to last week's episode, I mentioned we were talking about pyramid schemes, obviously. And my dad bought these cameras in bulk way back in the it was the late 80s. But when this happened, it was 1990. So just to kind of give you a better time frame. Okay.
Okay.
So this is in 1991 or something like that. Anyways, point being, my dad sold cameras to this guy, and he had just met him. I don't know exactly where they met, but he was selling cameras. This guy bought a few cameras from him. So he was like, great, good customer. I can get out of this pyramid scheme. Like, it's a win-win. Well, the guy kind of ghosts him, and he just kind of falls off the face of the earth. And my dad was like, what happened to this dude? Like, I really need to sell the rest of these cameras, but also, like, I've been, corresponding with him for like a few months now. Come to find out, one day my dad and my mom walk into a convenience store, just like, getting some stuff at the gas station. And my dad sees the local newspaper and like stops in his tracks, like blood rushes from his face, like just pale, like it just shocks him, right? Stops him dead in his tracks. And my mom thought like some celebrity died. My mom is so celebrity crazy. Like, thought some, like, she's like, oh my God, did like Magic Johnson die?
Right.
Come to find out, the guy that he had been selling cameras to was apprehended and arrested for serial murders in the Inland Empire area, the IE area, if you're from California. So his name is William.
Wait, let me get. Okay.
Oh, sorry. Guess.
No, that's okay. No, it wasn't who I thought it was. If his name is William, go ahead.
Who did you think it was?
I was gonna say Rodney Alcala.
Oh no,
he's the dating game killer.
Oh no.
Okay.
So sorry, I forgot that was our plan. Anyways, I was just way too excited because this is wild.
Okay.
So his name is William Suff. He's known as Bill Suff, and they actually call him the Riverside. They use the derogatory term prostitute, but they call him the Riverside killer. They also called him the Lake Elsinore murderer. Okay. And so he murdered like over 15 women who were known to be sex workers. He frequented like the same areas in the Inland Empire area. And basically he actually had like a whole past, like a pretty like crazy past. But yeah, he was apprehended, and that's the reason that my dad wasn't able to sell those last few cameras, was because his customer was actually a serial murderer. So
wow.
Wild, right?
That is wild.
Yeah.
That is crazy. I believe I have heard of him. But I don't think he's as well known as my guess. I mean, obviously, I feel like the dating game killer is pretty well known. There's a lot of stuff on him. But that does sound familiar. I feel like I've come across a podcast or something about him.
Right.
But wow. And then like follow-up question. Once you have a camera, why do you need more cameras? I mean, I know you need different lenses. I'm not an expert here, so maybe you do need multiple cameras, but like, what was the quality of these cameras? Do we know? How many cameras did he need?
My dad was roped into a pyramid scheme, so I don't think he was like, it's like with the knives, right? Like, are they the best knives? I don't know. But there were multiple cameras. I want to say that they were probably like semi-disposable cameras, like they were like, because it was film back then, right? So like maybe it just wasn't the best quality film, that like went through the cameras. I don't know. Again, that wasn't really the part of the story I thought you were gonna ask questions about.
I just was curious because I'm like, wow, this is like a loyal customer. Like how
I don't know. He also used to, there's a lot of details about it. Maybe we'll do a separate episode short on it or something. Yeah. But he used to like pose.
Maybe we should have your dad come on the podcast and tell everyone about it.
Oh my gosh. Well, he's a fan, so he's going to hear this and be like, yeah, I'll come on the podcast.
Right.
So we'll try to see if we can get him on here. But
that could be our first Patreon episode.
Oh, there you go. I know.
Subscribe. Yeah.
He didn't actually know as many details as like I did, because obviously there's so many articles. There was a low budget film made about this guy. But again, it just really didn't gain as much traction. Honestly, because there's just like a lot of serial killers. Like that's just the reality. Yeah, the US has 67% of the serial killers out of the entire world. 67% of them come from the US.
Well, there you go. We're so lucky.
Yeah. Wild. Yikes. But anyway, so not to veer us too far off the path of this week.
Right.
What are we talking about this week?
Something maybe not as equally terrifying, but still pretty not great. So also a record breaker for the US. So look out, world. The US is really coming at you this week. I was being sarcastic if that didn't read. So
yeah, because what is the topic?
Oh, we are talking about student debt.
Dun dun dun.
There it is.
Yeah, the real killer, the dream killer. You know?
Yeah, the dream killer. That's so true.
I know.
Hello, millennials. We're talking to you. I know everyone had a little, tightness in your chest when I said that. I'm so sorry, but hang with us. We're gonna get through it. Maybe. I don't know. We'll see. We'll at least get through this episode together. So let's get to it. Like we always say, we're not experts. We're not doctors. We're just two friends trying to figure out what's going on in the world, and certainly trying to figure out student debt. So pretty relevant right now, with COVID putting things on pause, but not getting rid of things altogether. So
not yet, at least.
Yeah, not yet.
Yeah, we'll see.
High hopes. So, all right. So let's start with understanding student debt. So student debt is typically incurred when a student needs loans to cover a portion or all of their tuition when going into higher education. For the US, this would be college, community college, university, something like that. It's usually paid through your own assets, which I didn't have that. I certainly didn't have any assets when I was ready to go to college. Grants, loans taken out by your parents or guardian, or by scholarships. They did not include it on this list, but loans taken out by yourself. I definitely, all my loans are in my name. Yeah. Or all of my loans are in my name. So
yeah. I have 3 older so that's I have 3 older sisters, so my parents had already taken out 2 loans, and there was nothing left for me, let's just say that. So they were all taken out in my name. So yay, independence.
Yeah, right. I'm sure you were really set up and prepared for that at 17 when you graduated and were ready to just take out a huge financial burden. Yeah. Just right on your shoulders.
Yeah,
there it is. Yeah.
And you have to like sign the form, right? Like you are consenting to this crazy interest rate, but I didn't even have a credit card yet. So
I had no idea.
Yeah, maybe
I didn't learn anything in economics. Like I didn't. No. So while it is possible for students to save money to put towards higher education, the escalating price of institution has grown exponentially, and it's very highly unlikely that people who are ready to go to college or some type of higher education system that costs money just have that money right out the gate.
Yeah. Right.
Probably so not. Right. And this is, especially for advanced degrees, right? Like those are so much more expensive. Ryann did get her master's degree, and it's something I had thought about, but the amount of debt that I have now really was a factor in me deciding whether or not that's something I wanted to do. And it might not be off the table. Maybe it's something I do in the future, but I mean, unless I absolutely 100,000,000% know that I want that degree, I'm not going back.
Right, exactly. I think it would be a lot smarter at this present day for high school students to be given like a realistic picture of what taking out a loan is, right? Because like it's like cost benefit analysis, right? Like is this degree that could put me, $60,000 to $70,000 in debt actually going to give me the return on this investment, right? Like, am I actually going to be able to pay these off in a reasonable amount of time? My parents are still paying off loans. They both have their bachelor's degree. My mom has her master's degree, and they are still both in debt from student loans because one, did not come from families with any, generational wealth, right? So they both came from pretty poor backgrounds. I mean, again, like when we talk about middle class, what does that even mean anymore? They didn't come from money, right? It doesn't matter. They did not have any money saved when they started a family, meaning that they paid for everything on their own. And they unfortunately went to school when college wasn't free anymore. And so that basically debt was kind of passed on to us, right? Like we also are in debt because they had nothing to give us. Right. And so it just kind of, it's like generational, it just similar to generational wealth. It's, passing on generational poverty. So
yeah. Anyway. No, absolutely. And it's not just the cost of tuition. It also is then topped with, textbooks and cost of living. You still, you need to live, and you might not be able to have a full-time job while you're going to school. And so it's not like you can, work your 40 hours a week and pay for your apartment and your food and whatever else you need.
Right.
So it becomes really difficult. So kind of to the point that we were talking about being so young, this article did point out that student debt is happening to people at such a young age before they fully understand the implications of their decision. And so that's true. If you are going to college straight out of high school, you are very young. My parents were very encouraging for me to go to school, and I really wanted to go straight to a 4-year university. And my parents didn't have a lot of money. They didn't have a savings for me. Like everything was through financial aid. And they made a point of, the money will come from somewhere, like go for the education you want. And while I appreciate that encouragement, and I do appreciate that I got to go to a good school, I do have quite a bit of student debt. So, and I didn't really understand what that meant. I knew that I was getting a check that would cover me for, the whole quarter, semester, whatever. So I was like, cool. All right, great.
Yeah,
that's fine. That works for me.
Right. No, exactly. And on the flip side, while Morgan was attending a 4-year university, I took the community college route because my mom and dad, my parents wanted to provide that 4-year experience, but unfortunately, like they just didn't have the funds to do it because I'm basically like the middle class where like didn't make enough to pay for it, but not poor enough to get financial aid. Right. And so it was just this ridiculous sweet spot, if you can call it that, but it was just this ridiculous amount of students that just didn't have any support from family or the system, right? Or the state or federal funding. And so I went community college route, but again, instead of wanting to like stay in my hometown, I went to, San Diego, and I went to Santa Barbara, and I'm again, same thing. I'm glad for these experiences, but at the same time, hindsight, right? Like I wish now looking back that maybe I would have just stayed and lived with my parents for a few years, It would have completely changed the trajectory of my life. Like I wouldn't be where I am. So I can't say that I regret it. But when I see students now, like, in the educational system, around their senior year, deciding to just stay home, I'm like, yes, that's honestly the best route. You will be able to leave and travel the world and do whatever you want eventually. But for now, like you should just honestly take the cheaper route because like you said, just not even understanding what the interest rate is, like the fact that we don't learn that in school, right, lets us know that you don't know how this is going to affect you later. Like your job choices, right? The place that you live, everything about your life is going to be dictated around, can I pay for my life plus this extra fee of, debt?
Yeah.
So
yeah, no, exactly. And to that point, a lot of people who are on special repayment plans, like income driven plans and different things like that, will probably be paying off their loans for 20 to 25 years.
easy.
So, like you were saying about your parents, like it hangs over your head, you know, and you and I talked about this, like how does that impact the choices we make as adults now?
Mm-hmm.
Like we don't own homes, neither Ryann and I. I mean, we own cars, but even that, my car payment, you know, I personally only have 2 credit cards. Like I have to be very cognizant of where my money goes because I have to make sure that I'm paying my student loans.
Yeah, right.
So like those prospects aren't even, you know,
they don't really
feel
apply
attainable.
To us. Yeah. Right, exactly. They don't apply to us. We know a few people. I've known people that I've worked with. We've had mutual friends who have been able to pay off their loans. I've read articles about how people successfully pay off their loans. And Morgan mentioned this to me, and it was a great example that they basically, you know, make a very high amount of money, right? But then they put about half of that income to their student loans. And they do that for like 5 years without doing anything else, right? Not traveling, not, you know, going to events. I mean, seriously, things as simple as like eating out, right? Like they're not doing anything.
Right.
Which seems like, oh, just cut out, right? We've talked about that. Just cut out your coffee. No, I'm not going to fucking cut out my coffee. I'm not going to pull my hair out because I'm trying to pay off loans for the next 5 years. Like, no.
Right, exactly. And I respect people who can do that. Like the example I had told Ryann was like a couple was making, let's say 100,000 each a year. They had great jobs, but they were living off of a budget of 50-60,000 for the year so that they could pay off their loans. And I get that. But at the same time, like, don't take away my sushi on Saturday. And sometimes I need my fancy drink, my fancy like Starbucks order.
Yeah.
These are the simple joys of my life right now. And that makes me very sad to think that they would go away.
Right. Yeah. And it's not even just that, right? It's like any joy.
Yeah.
If your joy costs, cut it out of your life, and maybe you'll be able to pay back your student loans within 5 to 7 years. Like that's wild.
Right. These could be the best years of my life. I have to go out. I have to buy that plane ticket. Who knows what'll happen tomorrow?
Exactly. So,
well. Okay, so Ryann actually found this article. It was really interesting. It was called, it was from The Debt Trap: How Student Loans Became a National Catastrophe by Josh Mitchell. So just a shout out there. But so where did this really come from? Even though college and universities, higher education hasn't been free for a very long time, and for some schools was never free. The 2008 recession really impacted student loan debt heavily. And by 2012, Americans' collective student debt is over $1 trillion, which surpasses the US credit and auto debt. $1 trillion.
Oh my gosh. So I want to cry. So we talked about this last week a little bit, you know, the difference between 1 million versus 1 billion versus 1 trillion. Like these are numbers that, again, 99% of us will never even understand because we will never, it'll be impossible to attain that amount of money. Right.
Right.
But as we were just saying off camera, like, canceling this would not affect anything. Like if that number just went away and we just didn't owe that money anymore, nothing would happen. There's no stock market based on it. There, even if there was, like that's a problem. But there's like no, you know, real serious issue. Like they're just companies contracted through the government to like take our money for the rest of our lives. So that's a wild number.
Right.
Yeah.
And we could put back into the economy in different ways. We could think about buying a house. We, you know, like these other things could become attainable.
Yeah. And, and like, that's the thing. Like, I have had conversations with other young people our age, and they're like, oh no, like buying a house that's attainable. Like you can do that. And I'm like, okay, one, buying a house that I want versus just being able to buy a house, right?
Right.
Like seriously, like sure, I could buy a house somewhere, but the fact that like the house that I live in currently now, I have no I have no ability to ever buy it because people that rent out houses just have so much money to just keep buying houses. Like, a lot of people around our age that buy houses have already been given some amount of money from their families. Their families have owned houses, right? My family owned a house and lost it in the recession. Like we owned a single house and then now we don't anymore,
Same.
Yeah, exactly. And that's like a lot of people's stories, right? So even the little possibility that I ever had of, maybe getting something from my family is like gone. And so I just think it's really easy for a lot of people that come from some type of generational wealth to say like, no, like everybody has an opportunity. Okay, well, like what opportunity, right? Like just because I can buy a 1-2 bedroom house in the middle of bumfuck nowhere does not mean that I want to like uproot all of my happiness to go do that. You know what I mean? So yeah, like you said, we could put back into the economy in so many ways. And the reality that all of us have to like stifle our dreams and our life because one day we're going to have to pay back thousands and thousands and thousands of dollars. Like it's just wild. And yeah, continue.
Not one day, all days, all days forever. We will be paying this back. And we're not saying that nobody can ever buy a house because they went to college. That's not what we're saying. There are so many factors that go into it. But like Ryann brought up earlier, what kind of job do you get after college? What connections have you made? Did you learn to make those connections? Like, you know what I mean? And especially, I would say for our generation, people don't stay in jobs as long as they used to.
Yeah.
And so even though there's more money to be made, there isn't that same, I don't know, longevity at one company necessarily. Or if you want to be an entrepreneur, having the capital and then buying a house as well, those are huge factors. So there's a lot that goes into this, but that's just one example of things that, I mean, us personally don't consider right now because we have so much student debt.
Yes, exactly. And, when I graduated from my bachelor's degree, I was making $15 an hour. And I fought for that job. Like I was looking everywhere for a job that at least paid $15 an hour. That was like the bare minimum that I could, get paid so that I could live on my own. Like, and so my dad, compare that to my dad when he graduated in the 80s, he also made $15 an hour graduating college. And he was able to like live alone, pay off like some parts of his college, like and you add that with inflation, like it's just not the same basically, right? $15 an hour in the 90s or in the 80s and 90s was like, comparable to making like $30 an hour now. It's very different. And so you just kind of think about that in perspective, like, sure, could I have, taken a different job and made more money? Yes, but like at what point do I also get to live my life for the things that I want to do, right? And I think that's why people our age don't last that long in the same company, because they realize that like I actually want to work for more than just a company,
Yeah.
For some people it works and that's great. Like kudos to you. I've tried it and it didn't work for me. I ended up being crazy unhappy. So here we are.
And now we're talking about it. No, that's really true. And so along with the recession, there was also a lot of encouragement for people to go to college, which is great. I did like going to college. I mean, I appreciate it more now that I'm older. While I was there, I was certainly not just focusing on my studies. We had a good time though.
For the experience,
Right, exactly. But I really appreciate the fact that I was able to go. And I do think education is important and everyone should have an opportunity in whatever they want to do. but it's not always attainable. I mean, it certainly isn't attainable for everyone in this system. So So tons of people around that time were enrolling and going to college. I mean, that was around the time we went to college a couple of years after, but it was huge, huge, huge. I feel like things have shifted more so now. I don't know if you feel the same.
So you're talking about like, so the recession was in 2008.
2008, yeah.
Oh, so yeah, right. So from 2008 to now is the time frame we're talking about, right?
Well, from 2007 to 2009 was when the recession hit. So that's when a bunch of people had their houses foreclosed on. But it was also a time when education was really being pushed and a lot of people were trying to go to college. So there were tons and tons of people taking out student loans.
Yes.
With like feeling that they would secure some kind of middle class job.
Right.
Which was like the hope, right? That was the plan. And that's what I'm saying. I think that things have shifted now, like with Gen Z.
Oh,
like,
for sure.
I don't know. I don't know a lot of Gen Zs. My cousin is probably the only one I'm really close to, and she's going to college, but she's going to probably be the president. So she's got to do a little bit more.
Sure. but even your cousin, right? She opted to stay home, live at home, go to the local college instead of going to some of the options that she had on the table, which would have costed more, right?
Right. No, that's true. And I don't think she has any student loans at this point. Like, she was really strategic about it, and she is getting ready to go to law school. So that will obviously be, expensive, but she's not going to go to law school with like $30,000, hanging off her shoulder already. So,
right. That's true. And that's the thing, right? Like, that's a great opportunity for her, good for her for going that route. But for so many people that want to go into a trade or want to go into a more specific field, and it requires more schooling, right? Like I said, like going for a master's or something like that. If it's not a lucrative field in that way, and I'm not saying it should be, like, you shouldn't have to make a lot of money just to be happy, right? Like, you should just be able to do what you want to do. But I'm saying if you're not going to be like a lawyer or a doctor or, something of that sort, it's kind of like you have to weigh, like, is it actually worth going after my dream, right? Is my dream actually worth it? Because I will have to pay for this. You know what I mean?
Right. So. No, that's really true. So with all this debt, people were falling behind on their bills. And so student debt, which had been seen as an investment, now started to resonate with resentment. So I think that's where this divide kind of happened with the recession. Like I said, people were going to school, investing, taking out loans, thinking the debt was going to go away because these jobs. But like you said, I mean, right out of college, I was getting paid $14 an hour. So that was, I mean, I was barely affording, our Trader Joe's weekly run, like, like that was it. And so it just doesn't play out according to the plan that you have in your mind.
Right, exactly. And I do think, especially being a teacher and working with a lot more Gen Z, age group, I will say that yes, they're forced to. They have to have a much more realistic understanding of the world that they live in, right? They still don't teach it really explicitly, but I do have a lot of conversations with my students that have to go into the military, right? Not necessarily because they agree with the military and what we're doing in this country with the military, but because they'll at least pay for your schooling. Like, that's where we are in this country. Students would, rather sign their life away for at least 3 to 4 years, sometimes more, and get college paid for than be, stifled with loans for the next 50 years of their life. I mean, that's like where we're at. Like, that's the divide. And so when you're talking about resentment, like, they are very upset because it's like, what are we inheriting? Like, what is this world that we're being given? Like, we're taught all these things about how America, has been so grand in the past, but at the same time, if we have all this money and our economy is so great, where is all that money when I need it to become like a citizen of this country? You know what I mean? Like, how is it that I can sign my life away, but also at the same time, like, not have enough money to, get my own car? But anyways, point being, I completely empathize with Gen Z. I understand where their resentment comes from, because me being a person that has seen like the decline of our country, and is upset with it, it just makes it really hard to like instill hope in these young people. Like, keep going, right. Like, they're like, yeah, I'm signed up for the military and I'm 17. Right. Like it's just a rough start.
Well, and I would say resentment with millennials as well. I feel like we're this generation that, this kind of in between generation. Like, how much do we talk about how things have changed from when we were teenagers until now? It's wild. It is. And I'm sure people have been saying this for years. This isn't a brand new thought I'm having right now. I'm just saying that, like, we came from a generation where going to school was really important, and that seemed like the only way to get a job. And like, how many jobs say like bachelor degree required? How many jobs? Like, during this time that we were talking about, like the recession, a little bit before, like right in this generation is really when you saw an increase in those requirements, like I'm saying, for like bachelor degree required for jobs that didn't necessarily require a bachelor degree.
Yes, that is right? So true. I don't know. I've worked for, a lot of community colleges, and a lot of just like public school systems. And I cannot tell you the amount of older people that work there without any degree that have just been working there for like, 20 years or something like that. But our age is coming in and replacing them. And we all have to be bachelor's degrees, master's degrees, 3 to 5 years of experience, which, just to let y'all know, all you old people that have these requirements, we're lying on the job applications. Okay. Let's just be real. Like, we are lying about having all this experience. Where am I going to get this experience from?
Oh my God. Yes. That is so true.
Makes no sense. So yeah, that's also where the resentment comes from. Because I'm like having to lie and like figure out how to like, maneuver this system that just like wasn't set up for success. Like, that's just the reality.
No. And they're not paying you as much. They're not going to pay you as much as the person who has 20 years of tenure at this school. Like, no way. They're like, we need you to have your master's and have done 3 internships and speak 2 languages. And we'll start you at 16 an hour. Like, what?
Yeah, exactly. With no benefits. Like, I'm sorry.
Yeah. And we'll guarantee 20 to 25 hours a week. Excuse me?
Right, I know, but you need to give 100% to this job. It's like, but you're not even giving me 100% of my income. So
right. They're like, your schedule will be from Thursday to Mondays. So like nothing. And it's graveyard. It's a graveyard shift. Did we mention that?
Yeah, that wasn't included on the job posting.
Right. But there's a lot of opportunity for growth here. Okay.
Yeah, exactly.
No wonder we're all going to different companies every year.
Right, exactly. Yeah. I've been the entry-level associate at like 7 different companies.
Oh, yeah. Oh, yeah, for sure. Same. Yep.
Oh, we're laughing and crying inside, just to let you all know.
Yeah, this is all true, by the way. So
yeah, exactly.
Yikes. Okay, so let's talk a little bit about where student debt comes from. And so this article was interesting because it talked about a lot of countries that don't require students to pay, or they pay very little. And so some of those countries where no tuition is required are Denmark, Estonia, Finland, Norway, Slavic Republic, Slovenia, Sweden, and Turkey. Now, this is as of 2013, 2014, so that may have changed. But in comparison to the numbers we're going to talk about for the US, they're probably not as high or as, I mean, just high, I guess.
Yeah, exactly.
It is here.
I mean, that's the thing. If there was even just one country that it was free, then it should be free here. You know what I mean? Like,
yeah,
it doesn't matter. It's for the general public, right? It's supposed to support the general public, right? Like, we want to be educated. But with those numbers, it's almost like they want us to be ignorant. It's wild. So wild. Crazy.
Right. No, that's true. And as we talk about the history, like I said before, college tuition in the US has never been completely free across the board. There are some universities that charged something, but there were a lot that were free. But they were set state by either state legislature or a board of trustees. And so just to kind of flip back really quick in regards to amount that people pay now for tuition, these things aren't regulated. And so they're still controlled by what is set by the state. So if it's like a state school, if you live in state, there's a certain tuition. Like we know living in California, it's cheaper to go to certain schools if you are a resident of California, and I'm sure it's similar. And just like going out of state, it can be more expensive if we wanted to go to school in Florida, let's say. Right. But you know, that's either based on the state, if it's a state school, or based from a board of trustees if it's like a private school. So there's no regulation around it.
No. Yeah, exactly.
So that's why these, you know, they go up and up and up.
Right.
And so it just gets more and more expensive to pursue higher education.
Yeah, exactly. And if you look at any of these board of trustees, they're just rich people. Like they're just rich people sitting on a board. And of course, it's in their best interest, right? Because a lot of these people are what they call stakeholders, right? Which just means they have more say than the student population. That's like all that means.
Right.
And so, yeah, like you said, it's not regulated. And that's just like so many different fields in this country. There's just no regulation. Banks, right? Like we had to bail out the banks when like the recession hit. It's because there's just no regulation. They're able to do whatever they want. And then when it comes crashing down, because of course it would, because capitalism is unsustainable, who has to bail them out? Guess what, people? It's us. It's those very large amount of tax dollars that are coming out of all of our paychecks go to bailing out these very unsustainable, you know.
Right. And in one of the articles that I was looking at, like the banks got bailed out because they gave so many loans to people who couldn't pay them back during the recession. So that's why so many houses were foreclosed on.
Right.
And so instead of bailing out the people who would be paying back the loans, you're going to bail out the bank who is owed a bunch of money.
Right.
So they're good. But now all these people have still lost their homes.
Yeah. Yep.
Okay, cool. That's what we're doing. Okay.
Right. So I should sign up for the military is what you're saying. Got it. Okay.
Oh my God. Yeah. So one example I found, well, there are a few examples of colleges and universities offering free tuition decades ago. And especially universities established through federal land grants. And that was starting around the 1860s. And so there was one example I found that said that California offered a free tuition to in-state students until the 70s. Okay. So that's pretty good. Although it had charged an incidental fee starting in 1921.
Okay.
So I couldn't find exactly what that incidental fee was, but I'm sure it wasn't, you know, $18,000 a year, whatever it is. So
yeah, most students at the time were working at like a local diner or something, you know,
and
like
they were paying for school. Exactly. Yep. You could work your weekend job or whatever it was, and that was good enough. Like it's pretty wild. And so another example I found was at the University of Florida. There was a school catalog that was found from 1905 to 1906 school year. And it said no tuition is charged to students whose home is in Florida, so in state free tuition. All other students will be required to pay a tuition fee of $20 per year.
$20.
$20 per year. So did the inflation calculator. And now today, $20 a year would be $623.90 for the year.
Wow.
If I could pay that. I had an on-campus job. I could pay that.
Right. Wow. So if it actually went up with inflation.
Right. So this is what we're talking about. Saying there's no, right. Exactly.
Okay.
Yep.
Got it. Sorry. Yep. Say that again. I apologize. Go ahead. Just the unregulated part, because I kind of cut you off. Just say that.
Oh, no, I was just saying that this is what we're talking about when we're saying unregulated. Because if that was just based on inflation, people living outside of Florida who want to go to the University of Florida would only have to pay that $600 and something.
Wow.
And I didn't look up what the tuition is for out-of-state students for University of Florida, but I can guarantee you it's not $623.90.
Wow, that is wild. Yeah. And like, that's the thing. I know it's like not an easy subject, right? Because a lot of people have paid off their loans, right? And like, good on you if you have, like if you don't have any loans anymore, or you were able to pay them off, that is like super awesome. That's a great thing to aspire to. But I do also know that like it causes resentment, but it also like, it kind of causes this divide, I think, amongst people our age, where people who have been able to do it feel like, well, if I can do it, you can do it. And like, to me, I think we've talked about this on past episodes, but for me, it's like, that's something that like, just because I had to do it, I don't want anybody else to have to do that. Yeah. You know what I mean? Like, just because I'm having to figure out a way to struggle and suffer through, I don't want the next generation to have to do that same thing as well. You know what I mean? I want people to be as educated as they would like to be. Some people don't want to go to school, right? Some people have zero debt from school because they decided to go other routes. And like, kudos to you, because there was like a lot of shame wrapped up in that, because people were very judgmental, right? Like, wow, they didn't go to college.
1000%. Yeah. Right, I didn't even consider not going to college, because I thought that feels like the worst option of my options. Like, how would that look? And now I'm older, like I have an English degree. Have I done anything in regards, like everyone asks me all the time, oh, are you going to be a teacher? Like that was the biggest question I got when I got an English degree. I just enjoyed English. I enjoyed writing, and I wanted to go to a 4-year university. I did not put as much, or I wasn't as thoughtful when I was picking that out. I just knew I had to go to a 4-year university, and I knew I liked English over math and science.
Yeah.
And like I said, I appreciate my degree. I don't want to sound like I am not grateful, but I did not even consider the option of not going to college.
Right. Exactly. And, even someone like my mom, who is a huge advocate for college, right? She has just always been that way. She's always like believed in educating yourself. Right. And also it's about gaining perspective on life, right? Like meeting different people of different age groups and backgrounds. It's a lot more about that than just like the classes. Right. But yeah, she was the same way, right? Go to college, do it while you're young, like you'll figure out the rest later, and even she has come like to change her mindset on that, where now she's like, I mean, college is a great, opportunity, but if you could figure it out another way, like maybe do that. If you have a hobby that doesn't require those years of education, that you want to turn into a lifestyle, maybe go for that first, honestly. And it's just so interesting to see, because I think a lot of times we have like generational divides, and people just feel like, well, that's just the way, boomers think. And that's just the way Gen Z thinks. But like, it is possible to change your mind, and like, we should all like reserve the right to change our mind about some things. I used to be a huge proponent of education, but just seeing the way it kind of crushes people's dreams and, and they're like, well, I have to do this because I want to make a lot of money. Like becoming something that you're not happy in, like that's why we see things happen like the Great Resignation, right? Mm-hmm. Like where all of these people around our age group, around like 30, mid 30s, are just like completely changing careers, right? And going in a completely new path because they're like, I've been in this career for 10 years now and I hate it. Yeah. Right? It's not like, it's okay. No, it's like, no, I hate it. Like I can't go to this job one more day. So much so I'm going to risk my entire life and go in a new direction, which is beautiful, but it also just kind of like points to the fact that like, it's okay to change your mind. You know what I mean?
Right. No, that's so true. And I think our accessibility to information, like presently today, is so like exponentially so much more, I don't want to say accessible again, but you know what I mean? Like, I don't know, how should I phrase that? Our accessibility to information
has grown. I mean, yeah, it's like rapidly increased.
Rapidly increased. More so now than ever.
Yes.
So if you need another reason not to go to college, we have the internet.
Yeah, the University of Google is open 24 hours.
Absolutely. And not just Google, but accessibility to other people. Like you can connect with people through social media. You can find mentors. You can find, I don't know, internships. There are other ways of getting to where you want to go. And that's not to discourage or encourage college, but I think that does play a factor in the way we think about if you should or shouldn't go to college as of 2022.
Yes. Period.
Oh, with all that being said, how does student debt affect us? I'm talking about millennials.
Okay.
So millennials, just to break it down a little bit more, are people who are born between 1981 and 1996. Just so we've never talked about the numbers. So I just wanted to make sure to put that in here.
That's a good point.
Mm-hmm. I mean, I assumed I'm a 90s baby. So like but I guess the 80s makes sense too. Like I didn't know it went to 81, but there we go. According to the University of Google, it's 1981 to 1996. So there we go.
I mean, I guess we'll take the 80s babies. All right.
Yeah. All right. Hop on this train, 80s babies. We're going off the rails. So
yeah.
Okay. So again, just because I know you guys want to hear this number, Americans currently owe somewhere in the range of $1.7 trillion in student loans. That amount is greater than the economy of Canada. So we'll just take a breath, everyone. All of Canada. It's really big. I know they don't live across the whole country. It's quite cold in some places, but I read that and I was like, wow.
Yeah. Let's just all take a moment of pause, really let that settle in your spirit. Trillion. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And 0.7 of another trillion. Like that's a lot of money.
Yeah. It's almost 2 trillion.
Yeah, exactly. I didn't want to say that, but I was like, I know it's a big difference, but still
it's closer to 2 trillion than 1.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Wow. That's
I know.
Makes my chest hot,
Yeah. Makes you feel like you had 8 shots of espresso as well, right? Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah. So all right. So as of 2005, again, just a little bit of perspective for our, millennials here. The average debt was around $17,000 for student loans, but in about 15 years, that figure has climbed to $30,000. And that directly impacts 37 million student borrowers. So when you're wondering where the 1.7, if you're wondering 1.7 trillion, that's us. That's the $30,000 times the 37 million. And no, I'm not doing the math and I don't know if that's exactly correct, but I'm just saying.
Yeah.
That's how many borrowers are in the US. And that is, 30,000 just in comparison to the 17,000, you can see how the, tuition has grown, the amount of loans has had to grow in order to be able to go to college, university, even community college.
Right. And you also, did even mention, which again, there's a lot of reasons, but also like college is requiring you to live on campus for your first year, or some colleges have 2-year requirements that you have to live on campus. Like, I'm sorry, are you paying my rent? You're not even paying my dorm expenses. Like, how can you require me to live anywhere? That's just so wild, which is why the amount of commuters has risen exponentially also, right? Because people have to drive to school now. Like, I have to live at home. Otherwise, like, I can't do both, right? You have to choose.
Right. So. No, that's a good point. Or if you live at home, you have to live within a certain distance of the school. So like my cousin had a friend who was using her address just so that they didn't have to live on campus. Wow. So it sucks.
Yep. Again, and no regulations. So they just do whatever they want. Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
Exactly. And so just looking at who's impacted by this, obviously from a lower income background, you're still going to face the biggest struggle because you don't have any kind of generational wealth. Financial aid opportunity might not be as available, or even information. Information about what is available is limited, unfortunately. Right. And then on top of that, the middle class, a lot of people from the middle class, it seems to be easier to get a degree, but that's not true, because a lot of people who may have had some kind of savings or wealth lost it during the recession.
Right.
Or you fall into that weird middle ground that Ryann was talking about, where your parents make too much for you to qualify for financial aid, but they aren't poor. Sorry, let me say that. I said that backwards. They're not poor enough.
Right.
Or low income enough for you to get financial aid, but they don't make enough to pay for your whole tuition. So what do? You have to take out loans.
Exactly.
So middle class, actually, I believe it says, has the most debt. If you were to look at these, like where people fall within, like, I don't want to say like the class system, but what do we say?
I mean, it is basically, we're basically peasants at this point. Like, seriously, like, you learn about the different caste systems from the past. And I mean, that's basically where we are now. Like, the majority of working class people are serfs, like, seriously, and we have like the bourgeoisie, eat the rich, with all of this wealth. And it just, the divide grows and grows each year, right? It gets worse and worse with the coming years. Yeah. So.
Right. Exactly. And so what happens to someone who's leaving college $30,000 in debt? Read my memoir. No. So So this article put it pretty nicely. Despite their qualifications, grads often have to settle for lower paying jobs, lower skilled jobs, so that they can start paying their loans off right away. Because we all know that we get that letter at the end of school. Yay, congratulations on your degree. By the way, you need to start paying this off like right now, like yesterday, and
right.
And there's some people who don't finish their degree. So what do? You're like, oh, okay. So I couldn't afford my last semester of college. I still have $30,000 of loans. And now I don't have the bachelor's degree required for all of these jobs I can't apply for.
Right. Exactly.
So.
And, and I'll just never forget, because like taking out these loans, you're signed or you're contracted to these companies that, again, are not regulated. So they're basically just shark loans, right? The worst type of loans, right? With the worst type of interest rate. And so after, when you do start paying back these loans, again, if you still don't understand like what that interest rate looks like, you're not even understanding that you're really not even paying back towards the amount that you borrowed. You're just paying on the interest, right? If you pay like the least amount possible on your loans, you're just paying interest. So even if they offer you like, oh, you can pay, $25 a month or something like that, just know that that bumps your trajectory up to like 70 years or something wild,
right.
like, so again, it's sad because it takes years to get approved for some credit cards, right? It takes years to get approved for a nice car loan, right? Or a house loan. But when you're 17 and a half years old, you can sign $80,000 away nearly immediately, right?
Right. Right. And a lot of times you do have to get a co-signer. So now it's not even like, okay, if something happens to me, like this debt goes away. No.
Right.
They're gonna, these hooks are sunk in deep.
Right. Exactly. Yeah.
So it's rough. And this article did have a good this article did have a good quote that said those with student loan debt are also less likely to take out car loans. They have worse credit scores and they appear more likely to be living with their parents. So yes.
Right. Yeah. Check all the boxes.
Right. Exactly. And that's just how, we've been saying that this whole episode. Like you are going to hold on to the money you have as tightly as you can, because you enter the workforce with this huge like burden on your shoulders already. So it's really, really hard to, find the best opportunity for you or pursue, maybe whatever your dreams are.
Right.
It is harder and it is a lot.
Right. Exactly. Yeah. Not to go off too much, and I'll just make this short, but I remember when I was at community college, and, loans are not easy to get either. Like, you kind of have to check back on them, make sure that it actually processed, right? You have to stay in financial aid office. If you know the experience, you know what I'm talking about. If you know, you know. But I'll never forget, one of the ladies working in the financial aid office was just like upset at me that it was like the third day that I had checked on my loan. And she was just like, you'll get your money soon enough.
Whoa.
And I'll never forget that for many reasons, obviously. But one of the main reasons was just like, it's not even my money, lady. It's going to the school.
Right.
Like, this isn't for me and my vanity. You think I'm going to go like get my nails done? No, I'm going to go work at Starbucks for 39 hours a week and like give this money right back to the school that you work for. Like, no, it's actually going toward your paycheck because I don't get to see any of it, And so it's just like, I don't know, if you find yourself on the more privileged side of things, being debt-free, if you find yourself having generational wealth, if you find yourself having parents to live with, like, please just take a second thought before you look down on someone for not being excited to have a plan to pay back their loans, or take the most expensive or the most best paying job because they don't want to give up their happiness for, being an entrepreneur and making less money. Like, just kind of take a second thought and think about the fact that like some people don't want to work for the man their entire lives. Some people just want to like live a nice, modest life. You know what I mean? Without having this weight of interest on their back for the rest of their lives. So just know you're privileged, if, and be thankful for it. That's all I'm saying. Just try to think about that sometimes.
Yeah, a lot of times.
I know, all the time.
Yeah, all the times. So what can we do about it? Obviously, information is key, but for many of us who've already acquired this debt, what can we do? So there are organizations like the Debt Collective, which Ryann showed me, and it was really interesting. So I might let her take this part. But they are an organization that has roots in Occupy Wall Street. And so they, some of the founders helped write the Debt Resisters Operation Manual and launch Rolling Jubilee, which is a mechanism for purchasing portfolios of people's debt on secondary debt markets and canceling it. So they use crowdfunded donations. The Rolling Jubilee, or using crowdfunded donations, the Rolling Jubilee abolished more than $32 million in medical student payday loans and probation debt. And they've collaborated with the New Economy Project to ensure 120,000 judgment debts worth 800 million were fortified and retired as part of a legal case. So they are doing some really amazing work, not just on student loans. That's why I just kind of wanted to point out what they do overall. But they are doing a lot to help reduce debt for many things. But on our topic today, student loans. And they recently had a rally in DC, right? It was in DC. Yeah. And, you know, we wanted to cover this topic because student loans have been pushed back due to COVID. And this is a very present and omnipresent, really, situation that a lot of people, 37 million to be exact, are dealing with. And so there are these organizations that are helping to relieve this debt. So, yes. Ryann, I'll let you jump in if you want.
Right. I mean, yeah, exactly. I just wanted to highlight organizations like these because I know that a lot of times, like I said, you know, like I mentioned, like it comes with a lot of judgment. You know, people are quick to assume that because you have debt, you know, or because you're not in a rush to pay off your debt, that you don't want to be a part of, you know, contributing society, right? And you don't want to just like, you know, go through what it takes to like be an adult. And like, again, I have my own issues with being an adult anyway. Like I didn't subscribe to this. Like I didn't agree to be an adult. Let's just be real here. I have a fucking cast on right now. Okay. I broke my leg. I am not an adult. No, I'm just kidding.
Right. She was walking.
I was walking. Okay.
She can't even do that right, you guys.
Exactly. Look at me. No, but anyway, point being, I just think it's really important to make sure that we know there are people out there that also agree. This is wild. Like we are living through wild times, not just because of the pandemic, right? It just gave us all time to actually look around and see just how bad situations we're getting. And so I think things like the Debt Collective just offers some type of relief to us, even if they don't get the debt, you know, totally canceled for the rest of our lives. It just at least gives us the time to realize, look how much people have been able to do because they don't have to worry about their student loans, right? Like people are literally changing their entire lives because the fact that they don't have to pay loans. We are like, me and my husband are considering getting a roommate because when loans start up again, like our finances completely change, right? Like the things that we're doing now, we may not be able to do. Yep. You know, the little bit of savings that we put away, we won't have anymore. Our savings will actually be gone when we have to start paying loans again. So yeah, the Debt Collective does awesome work. Please look them up. They are on Twitter, Instagram, you know, just like we are. So plug in our information as well. But you know, look these people up and see what they do, because it's really nice to find community and understand that not all people agree to this system, right? There are people that want to change it. So
right. A lot of people. So definitely check them out. And I mean, that kind of wraps it up. So big question, are we doing this wrong?
We meaning our country? Yes.
Yeah.
And you know what? I am a part of this country. You know, I'm not going to say like, not my president. Like, you know, Biden is my president. It fucking sucks. And I wish he would like live up to one of his promises and cancel the fucking debt. But at the same time, like, this is our country. Like, this is what we're given. I shouldn't have to flee to another country because we suck so bad. So yeah, America, we're doing it wrong. We've been doing it wrong for a long time.
Right. Yeah. We didn't get to 1.7 trillion overnight. So
exactly. So, but we have ways to fix it. So like debtcollective.org, I think.
Yes. We will have all of our resources in the show notes, guys. So definitely check them out. But that wraps it up for this week. Hopefully that episode wasn't too terrifying. If you do have student loans, check out your resources. It has been pushed back to August, I believe, as far as repayment goes. So maybe we'll circle back in August, see where things are.
Have better news.
yeah, hopefully better news. Yeah. So thank you guys so much for tuning in for another episode. We really, really appreciate it. Thank you so much to our amazing interpreters who joined us for this episode. Thank you guys so much. As always, rate, review, and subscribe wherever you get your podcasts, or check us out on YouTube for the visual conversation, language access provided. Come hang out with us on Instagram or Twitter. We are at Wrong the Podcast, and we cannot wait to see you guys next week for another episode. Thanks.
Bye.
Bye.